just so you know, I have you guys all muted. But if you have questions, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to click the chat button and enter a question, and then it'll show me that, and I can answer as we go. And then if I have like a question for you guys, I'll unmute you guys, and then you can obviously chat if you want to. But so so I see Annie is on. I know you've got 2 kiddos my age. And then LGM322, that's the only name I see, so I'm not sure who that is, but welcome. So we're gonna chat in my kitchen a little bit about kids and nutrition, and maybe some of the strategies and tips that I've used over the last few years to kind of get kids to either pivot or kind of introduce new foods into their diet. So first of all, I have to add a disclaimer, kind of saying that I'm not a doctor, a pediatrician, a registered dietitian, and I cannot give you any like medical advice when it comes to your kiddos. So if your kiddos have any type of nutritional needs or special dietary requirements, that's something you would definitely have to discuss with their pediatrician. But I'm more than happy to give you my opinion or my advice or something that has worked for you in the past. So with that, let's see. So we're going to talk a little bit about the 3 topics: protein, sugar, and veggies, which are kind of 3 hot topics when it comes to kids. So the first one, talk about like how much of each should kiddos be getting on a daily basis, which is kind of a common question that I get a lot. If you've got a young toddler or kind of a growing teenager, how many grams of protein or servings of veggies do they need? And it can vary a little bit. So when we're talking 2 to 3 year olds, you're only looking at needing about 13 grams of protein, and about a half a cup to maybe 1 cup of vegetables. When we're talking vegetables, we're thinking like broccoli, asparagus, like any type of salad components, carrots, cucumbers, peppers, all that type of stuff. We're not talking corn and sweet potatoes. Those are considered starches. For 4 to 8 year olds, when we're looking at protein and veggies, they need about 19 grams of veggies and about 1 to 1.5 cups of veggies. And then if you're talking about like a teenager, maybe 8 to 13, 8 to 15, about 34 grams of protein and maybe about 1.5 to 2 cups of vegetables. And that's obviously recommended by most pediatricians and doctors. But I would venture to say that most adults barely get 2 cups of vegetables a day. So fighting to get your kids to eat that much is obviously a challenge. So this nutrition lecture is kind of about how do we even introduce the concept of protein and veggies to your kiddo's diet. And then eventually, once that's a staple with their daily routine and their program, then you can kind of worry about like, okay, are they getting enough? But if they won't even touch broccoli, I wouldn't say like, you're 8 years old, you need 1.5 cups of vegetables, and then trying to force them into it. And then the third topic would be sugar. And how much sugar does a kiddo need throughout the day? And whether you're 2 or whether you're 18, the recommended amount for anybody kind of in that growing stage is going to be less than 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. And by sugar, I'm not talking necessarily straight sugar, like scooping it out of a bowl of white sugar and like feeding them 6 teaspoons a day. We're talking about sugar contained in natural resources, added sugar into other components, so less than 6 teaspoons. And 1 teaspoon actually equals 4 grams of sugar. So if you're looking at the back of a food label and it shows that you have 9 grams of sugar combined into 1 serving of some kind of kiddo's snack, you're gonna know that has just slightly over 2 teaspoons of sugar already. So when we're picking snacks, sometimes the natural or like organic words that we see on like a granola bar or yogurt or cereals or even like squeezy packs that my kids love, they seem healthy or organic and maybe straight from nature, but then if we look at the back, one serving or one granola bar, maybe even one squeezy pack of like fruit and veggies can have upwards of like 15 to 20 grams of natural sugars in them, and then you're already looking at 5 teaspoons. And so we just want to be really careful with that as well. Fun statistic for you guys is that did you know that sugar is actually 8 times more addicting to a child's brain than even cocaine is for an adult? So feeding them even small portions of sugar throughout the day, whether it's a piece of candy, like waffle with syrup, all that type of stuff, that sweet tasting thing triggers in a kiddo's brain the same type of dopamine response that an adult has when they're experiencing the actual effects of the drug cocaine. So that one was a little scary to me to learn. So just so you know, and kind of are aware of that type of stuff. So any questions on like how much do my kids need per day for all of that stuff? No? Okay. So let's get into a couple of strategies when we're talking about introducing things that our kiddos may not like. And mainly I'm going to talk about protein and vegetables. It's not really hard to get your kids to like macaroni and cheese, to like mashed potatoes, to like toast or waffles or something like that. Mainly those carbohydrate type things, or even fruit. It's not hard to get your kids to like that. Protein and veggies are the 2 things that I work most with parents on, where they're just like, I cannot get my kids to eat this stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about those 2 main components today. And so first kind of thing we'll talk about is strategies when you're first thinking about either pivoting a kiddo's diet that's already gone south, maybe. If you've had a picky 2-year-old for a while or a teenager and you want to pivot them, these are some strategies. Or if you've got a brand new kiddo and you're just starting to introduce foods into their diet, you can start out with some of these strategies and maybe be ahead of the game a little bit than maybe some of your previous kiddos. So the first kind of strategy or mindset that I usually incorporate is to have patience. And when my daughter was about 2 years old and we started introducing more foods with her, she was super, super picky, and I couldn't get her to eat anything other than like formula or, your basic like pureed fruit. And so it took a long time, and we actually worked with a kid's nutritionist to try and get her to pivot a little bit. And so I learned a lot from her with my second kiddo. But one of the things that she told me that was just kind of mind-blowing to me was that it can take up to 40 to 60 exposures for a kid, just for one food, for a kid to accept or have that now be a staple in their diet. So for them to actually experience a food up to 60 times before they're actually willing to accept it as like, okay, Mom, I'm good with this. So having patience is key. So even if you're on like try number 30 and they're still not kind of going for it, that you're probably only halfway there, and it might still be 30 more tries before they get there. And kind of the progression of it that happens is a kiddo will see a food and they'll pick it up and experience it with their fingers and look at it, and then they're gonna put it back down and reject it. And that's an exposure, 1 out of the 60. Maybe on try number 20, you're going to have them pick it up and they may actually put it in their mouth and then possibly spit it back out at you, or take it out and put it back on the plate and again reject it. And that's another exposure. So that might happen on try number 40. And maybe by try number 60, they're going to actually pick it up, eat it, and then swallow it and consume it. And then you're kind of at that over the hump where they're like, okay, you know what, I'm okay with this now. So one, have patience and don't give up. Continue to put those items on their plate at every snack and every meal, regardless of whether or not they've rejected it 30 times and said, no, Mom, I told you I don't like broccoli. Put it on their plate anyway in small portions and small components. And that's an exposure for them. And that's them getting used to seeing it on their plate. So if it's there, they kind of get used to the idea that this is normal, this is what we eat. They don't have to consume it all. You don't need to force it or do something like you're not leaving the table until you've had your broccoli and you can sit there for 6 hours till we're all going to bed. You don't need that strategy, but continue to put it on the plate with every meal and snack. Try a couple of first thens, which is a strategy that I use a lot, whether it's for toys or food or snacks or anything. And essentially just means that you're going to consume a vegetable or a protein first, and then you're going to get the more desirable item on your plate. And this is actually a strategy that I use with a lot of adults as well. It's not just for kids, but when you have a plate that has, you know, the buttery mashed potatoes on it, and then next to it is a grilled chicken breast and 2 cups of broccoli, obviously we're going to want to consume the mashed potatoes first. You know, you're craving it, your mouth starts watering, it's on your plate, so you're going to start eating it, and then that's going to be the first thing that you want to eat. And then once that's gone, you're probably 3/4 of the way full, and there's nothing left for the protein and the veggies, so you're probably going to eat less of it or reject some of it. It's going to be the same with kiddos. Some kiddos just eat naturally whatever's on the plate, and will just kind of automatically or autonomously just like eat, but they're going to eat what's most desirable first. So sometimes I'll start with the chicken and the broccoli. That's all that's on the plate at that point. They don't even know that the macaroni exists for the meal. So once they've had that chicken and vegetables, and they've eaten it kind of without even thinking about it, then I'll add those sweet potatoes, or maybe like a little serving of macaroni, or if we're doing like, you know, butter mashed potatoes or something like that, I'll put that on second. So it's first protein and veggies, and then that more desirable item. Maybe it was a muffin that you baked, so first this, then that. Maybe it was a like a dessert that they know is coming. It's first this, then that. Pretty common concept, but if it goes on the plate, automatically, whether you're 2 years old or 50 years old, you're going to desire what's more palatable, and then you're fuller and less likely to eat what's on the plate. And then kind of the last strategy, that was it. So we've got have patience, put it on their plates, and then use the first then rule. So let's kind of talk about the concept of disguising protein and disguising veggies. And that might be a little controversial. Maybe you're thinking like, well, my kids should get used to this, and they should just know that veggies are healthy, and I shouldn't have to disguise it. They should just accept it. Well, maybe disguising is step one, and then once we've kind of introduced it and pivoted our kiddos' routine, then it won't have to be so much effort to try and disguise it. So one way to disguise veggies and protein would be to gradually add it in like a 50-50 ratio. An example of that with my kids that I started with them was they love spaghetti and meatballs, but I wanted to try to start introducing some more veggies, and so I did that in 2 ways. One, I disguised it in the sauce, so I cooked down mushrooms and onions and peppers, like really, really, really soft, and then essentially just threw it into the marinara sauce, so they didn't even know it existed. And then the other way was taking 50% regular pasta and then 50% spaghetti squash and combining it into one bowl. and then putting on the meatballs and the marinara sauce. And so it was like kind of transitioning them into a more spaghetti squash type feel to their routine, without 100% just taking out that pasta. And they responded to it really well. Like 2 out of 3 times they wouldn't even notice it. Again, there's a lot of kiddos that they just eat what's on the plate, if they know that the category is something that they like. So if you're saying, tonight we're having spaghetti and meatballs, they're just going to automatically think like, okay, what's on my plate is spaghetti and meatballs. But if you've secretly disguised half of their spaghetti with spaghetti squash, they may not notice it as much. And after about a couple of weeks, I completely replaced all spaghetti with just spaghetti squash. And now anytime spaghetti and meatball night comes up, we just do spaghetti squash. We don't even really do spaghetti that often anymore. Sorry guys, if it sounds like I'm out of breath or like I just did the workout of the day, like obviously I've got like a, feels like a 35-pound kid just like shoving on my diaphragm. So that's why I sound out of breath for the whole time that I'm doing this. Okay, so another strategy to kind of disguising your vegetables is to try out new flavor profiles and textures. And this worked like a charm for my kids. Kids love food that is crunchy and salty. So they're obviously going to love things like chips and crackers and apples and things like that. So when you take vegetables and add like a salty and a crispy component to it, it gives it a whole new flavor profile that they are way more open to. So roasting broccoli and asparagus and Brussels sprouts with like olive oil, and don't skip the salt, okay? Like don't try and give them the steamed broccoli maybe that you were fed as a kid that, your mom tried to force you to eat. Like add in the salt, add in the fat, and go roast it and make it taste really good. And that flavor profile or that texture profile for the kids becomes a lot more palatable, okay? So my kids at this point, if I roast broccoli, asparagus, and Brussels sprouts, they'll eat all 3, and usually without a fight. Let's see. Another way is to try adding some sort of like not like spicy, like hot, but spice to it, or some sort of flavor to it. So Parmesan cheese is a really common one that I use to cook on top of vegetables when I'm roasting them. So roasting and kind of getting a crispy exterior of Parmesan cheese on top of the asparagus, the broccoli, or the Brussels sprouts. It works with all 3. Then it has that crispy, cheesy, salty, kind of savory flavor that the kids really enjoy. And so that's kind of been a winner at our house, is just put Parmesan cheese on it and the kids will eat it. Or even just Parmesan cheese on top of spaghetti squash, and they're good to go. Let's see. Disguising veggies and protein is where we're at, if anybody has been joining in. Again, if you have questions, guys, use that chat button at the bottom, and I will be more than happy to answer your question. Let's see. Egg whites in oatmeal. That's another way that I disguise protein really easily. And I don't know if your kids eat oatmeal, but mine love oatmeal, especially if it's like sweet with like strawberries or blueberries. But obviously oatmeal is just a healthy carbohydrate, but it's just carbohydrates. And so I'll replace the water in oatmeal with egg whites. So instead of covering the oatmeal with water and then put it into the microwave, I'll cover it with egg whites and put that in the microwave. And the texture is exactly the same as normal oatmeal, but you've added in a good like 15 to 20 grams of protein in one serving. The one tip I do have for this is make sure that you do it 20 seconds at a time. So put it in 20 seconds, take it out, stir it, and do that about 3 times. And then you've got pretty much oatmeal consistency. If you don't pull it out and stir it, you're gonna get like an egg white omelet on top and then cooked oatmeal on the bottom. And that's actually a good one, again, that I use for adults a lot who struggle with protein. So if you like oatmeal, adding in egg whites in place for the water is actually really good. Let's see, what else do we got? So as far as veggies, for kind of hiding those would be to let them dip it into something, and that's kind of a more obvious one, but let them go crazy on the ranch if they're first learning to like veggies. Hummus is really popular with my kids as well. Keep it basic. Don't buy like chipotle flavored cayenne spicy hummus. Keep it just to the basic regular hummus for kids. Peanut butter is always fun to dip like carrots or celery into, and then like some sort of Greek yogurt ranch combination is really good as well that we've tried here. So having some fun way for them to dip so that it's not just a carrot that they've been given or a sliced red pepper or something like that. And then kind of my last disguise it technique would be to find new sources of protein that may not be that obvious, or find new ways to add veggies in that may not be that obvious. And it's kind of cheating a little bit, but if you want your kid to like chicken, you have to introduce them to chicken. You have to put it on their plate 60 times. But if you're just trying to increase protein intake, there's a lot of kind of tricks that I use. And one of those is, if you're gonna do pasta, then try one of the lentil pastas. And this is actually our favorite. It's the Banza Linguine, and it's made out of chickpeas. And if you can see here, it has 23 grams of protein per serving. And I think in one box, there's 4 servings in here. So this whole thing has like 100 grams of protein in it. So if you're feeding your whole family, like one serving is gonna give everybody like their full boost of protein for that meal. It's delicious. It tastes just like the real thing. My kids gobble it up just like they would normal pasta. But you're kind of sneaking in and disguising that protein component. And again, like I said, younger kids, 2 to 3, they only need 13 grams a day. 4 to 8, they only need about 20 grams a day. And like 8 to 13, 8 to 15 years old need about 35 grams a day. So like this is getting a big chunk out of it. And let's see, another one is rice. So if you normally do rice as a side or a starch and your kiddos are okay with that, I'll do like a quinoa and rice blend. And this is actually a super easy 90-second one in the microwave. But quinoa is really high in protein, and it's blended with brown rice. And it already has like the salt built in, so it's already flavorful. So my kids will eat this by the bowl full, and they're getting per cup, a good solid like 4 to 5 grams in like their little bowl serving. And then in addition to maybe adding on some chicken sausage or something like that, it is a good cheat. Another one would be yogurt. I don't know many kids that don't like the yogurt squeezy packs, but like I said in the beginning, the hidden sugars in like yogurt and squeezy packs are so high. So like one yogurt or Yoplait for a kid has like 12 grams of sugar. That's 3 teaspoons already. So this is our favorite brand. It's the Skyr, Skyr, I don't know, Skyr. It's super creamy, and it's a Greek yogurt type consistency. And I buy the plain, and then I sweeten it myself with stevia. So there's actually 0 sugar added into it. And then on top of that, I'm gonna add some blueberries, and then a crunchy component for them. I'll put a little bit of granola in there. And one container of this, I think has, 17 grams of protein in one container. So this is good for adults or for kids. Just be aware as kids that if you're gonna sweeten it yourself, like you gotta watch that sugar component. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so Annie, surprised by how much your kids like the Banza pasta. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Right. Let's see where we're at. Oh, maybe a couple of other tips for adding in protein. Cook with bone broth. Okay. So bone broth actually has 9 grams of protein per cup. And so if you have a recipe that calls for water, then just replace it with bone broth. One, you get more flavor, and 2, you're packing in some protein. So if you're cooking rice, add in this in place of your water. If you're cooking quinoa, if you're cooking like risotto or like a stew or a soup, add in bone broth, and per cup you're adding in 9 grams of protein. And then maybe one more is if you guys do taco night or like quesadillas. My kids love quesadillas. Then I'll do the chickpea flour tortillas, and then inside the quesadilla is cheese, and I'll do black beans inside, just kind of like mash them up against the cheese. And so they're getting probably in like one quesadilla like 6 to 7 grams of protein with the cheese and the beans and the chickpea flour tortillas. And get these nice and crispy, and a little bit of sour cream to dip it in, and they'll gobble those up pretty easily. Okay. Maybe a more obvious one for protein and veggies would be to blend it up. Put it in a smoothie. So funny story, until my daughter was probably about 2.5, maybe 3. I don't know if I fooled her that long. There was a smoothie recipe that I and Orion have that we kind of concocted, that we would just make extra thick, and we would put it into a cup, and we would tell her that it was ice cream, and she would just eat this like really thick vegetable and protein and fruit smoothie with a spoon, and thought it was ice cream. Obviously she's become a little bit wiser, but she still will eat the smoothie because it still tastes really good. She just doesn't think it's ice cream. But smoothies are a really good way to get protein into kids and to get veggies. So kind of the caveat to that is we cannot make this like a full fruit smoothie. If you're just blending up sweet yogurt plus blueberries and strawberries and a banana and some honey, all you did was like feed them a cup full of sugar. So there has to be a balance of the protein and hopefully like fiber and veggies in place of it. And so 2 easy ones are to use frozen kale and frozen spinach. They're very neutral in flavor. And if you have a high enough powered blender, then it'll really blend it up, and it won't make it like taste like they're eating vegetables by any means. So Orion and I's favorite combo is kale and spinach with blueberries, coconut water, protein powder, and this is our favorite brand is the Ascent Vanilla, a scoop of protein powder, and some almond butter. So you've got all 3 macros, which kids don't really care about, but you've got some fat, you've got your carbohydrates, you've got your protein, and then a ton of fiber and vegetable content. And if you put all of that into a blender, then honestly, like, it's sweet enough and cold enough and flavorful enough with the butter, it gets creamy, that they're going to like the taste, they're going to appreciate the texture, and you might be able to pull off like a legitimate amount of vegetables in a smoothie like that. Let them combine their own, like let them choose their own add-ins. That sometimes helps with kids, let them make their own choices. So do you guys have any questions up until this point, or anything that you wanted me to address? I've got 2 other things to like talk about, but any questions so far? Comments, concerns? This is my favorite meatball brand, by the way. It's pre-prepared, so you can freeze them. They're gluten-free. They're super high in protein, very minimal ingredients, and the kids love them. And it's literally just like dump it into a pot of marinara sauce, and they are super happy. Let's see. Okay. So kind of my last 2 notes as we're closing up here a little bit. If your kids are young, or if they're like really young and going to get to the point where they can participate, or right now if they're of the age where they can wield a knife, like a kid's knife, not an adult knife, let them participate as much as possible, which is huge for them getting used to textures of foods and appreciating that I made this, I'm more likely to eat it. But grab a kid's knife, set up a cutting board, and let them just chop away at anything that you're preparing for the day, whether it's mushrooms, an apple, a carrot. Sometimes I just grab random things from the fridge and just let them start chopping. Even if we don't use it for dinner, they're still helping me prepare and having fun. And then once I've prepared the regular dinner and they've made a huge mess, then we actually eat dinner together. Sometimes. I'm not trying to sound like the picture perfect mom, because trust me, half the time, like, I'm trying to keep the kids entertained in front of a movie while I'm like desperately throwing meatballs in a pan. Like that's not uncommon in our household at all. But when I do have them participating, we do actually sit down to a dinner. If they've helped me chop something up, then they're obviously more excited about it. Let them measure, let them make a mess, let them slop pancake batter everywhere, do whatever it is they need to do. And then the last one, it's going to be super obvious, and you guys probably know this, but you have to lead by example. If you are somebody that does not like what you are asking your kids to eat, it's highly unlikely that they are going to eat it as well. So you should have a vegetable component on your plate every night at dinner and at lunch. And then if they see you eating it, they may need to see you eating it 60 times, 40 to 60 times in order to actually accept that they're willing to try it as well. But if you're not leading by example and you're the picky eater in your family, then it's highly unlikely then you're going to get them to follow suit. And let's see, I think that was it. Monica, Banza is gluten-free. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Literally, the ingredients in Banza pasta is like chickpeas and pea protein. That's it. Okay. So it is a little bit higher than carbohydrates if you're watching, but most kids aren't going to be watching their carbs. We're really just trying to get them to eat protein and veggies. But yes, it is absolutely gluten-free. So, okay guys, so to any parents on here or any of the replays, I'm going to send you guys our kids nutrition ebook that I put together, and it just has pretty much everything that I talked about today, plus some of my favorite recipes. So I've got the oven roasted chickpeas, which is a really good one. So they get crispy and salty. That's one of the things the kids like. And then these are our crispy peanut butter protein bites, which if you saw my picture on Instagram or Facebook today of Ava helping me cook, that's her mixing up the protein bites, which we make all the time. They're in my fridge a lot. And I use them, I'm not gonna lie, I use them as bribery a lot. So it's the first then. So first eat your chicken and broccoli, and then you can have a peanut butter ball. But these are really easy and minimal ingredient snack for adults or kids. They're high in protein. They've got that crispy factor. They are super peanut buttery, which kids love. And so those recipes are in there, as well as my smoothie recipe. And then there's probably about 13 other pages of just like tools you guys can use for getting your kids involved in dinner. Something called the plate method, letting them draw their own dinner plate to say, hey mom, this is what I want for dinner today. Let them draw it out on a plate, and you guys can plan out your meals for the week. How to let your kids help you with your grocery shopping list. There's even some exercise, like family exercise routines in there. So that's all in our kids and nutrition ebook. And so if there's any parents out there who are watching or who want to, or are watching the replay at some point, I would be more than happy to send you that ebook, and you guys can download it and use it as you want. So, Annie says spiral shaped Banza. Oh, I've never heard of spiral shaped Banza. I'll have to give it a try. I did try the Banza macaroni. So it has like the cheese powder with it, but my kids didn't like it. And I think it might have just been the cheese powder that had kind of an odd taste to it. And so they kind of rejected that one. And so we do bonzo linguine as like butter noodles with like rotisserie chicken just thrown in there, or we'll do it with the meatballs. And Monica, I get these at Whole Foods. But I'm sure you could look up, it's Colamecos, COLAMECOS. I'm sure you could look them up online and they would have a website that would tell you where to buy if you wanted to find them somewhere else. But I get mine at Whole Foods. So, cool. All right, guys. Well, if you don't have any other questions, then I'm going to head out of here and release Orion and my kids from their prison. They're upstairs. They weren't allowed to come down during our meeting. So I will see you guys later. Goodbye. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.